For those of you who weren't here before, my name is Shear. I'm a historical and theatrical costumer. One of the things that I specialize in is burlesque costuming and vintage burlesque and vaudeville costuming, which means I make a lot of corsets from various different time periods and eras. And why is that relevant to JordanCon? Well, because Mr. Robert Jordan featured so many different decades and eras of fashion and clothing that you actually would want to have the correct undergarment to go underneath the costume that you're wearing. Simply, it makes the piece fit right. As we have our underpinnings that we wear now, that they change the shape of our bodies so that our clothes fit better. It was exactly the same concept back in the 1700s, back in the 1300s, 1500s. So the underpinnings were designed for the garments of that time period. And since Mr. Jordan did such extreme differences in the time periods and the regional clothing that he had envisioned for his costumes and his characters, you know, it's only good to go ahead and see what kind of underpinnings you can put underneath those things to make those costumes look as best they possibly can. I am here as someone who's just kind of sharing, like I said, tips and tricks about making a good costume or a good corset piece. Also, how to make a corset the centerpiece of the costume as opposed to just an underpinning or just a functional piece. Most of what I do is to show corsetry. I do not do a lot of waist training corsets. Waist training corsets, they use steel boning, and I have fibromyalgia. I simply cannot cut the steel. It's too difficult. Plus, most of the corsets that I make are very decorative, so they're going to be, you know, they're not the kind of thing you wear under your clothes every day. But this panel will tell you how to do just basics for under your clothes, as well as, you know, ooh, let's make this really fancy and make my costume look really good. The first thing I would like to talk about is materials. As I had said in my panel earlier this morning, materials make a very big difference in the feel and look of your piece. When you can't really work with stretchy types of materials when you're doing corsets. It's got to be a thick material. It's got to have some weight or body to it. In general, you're going to have between 3 and 4 layers in a corset. So you want to pick something that will either A, look really nice underneath your piece, it's going to have a nice smooth surface, or if you want to do an exterior one, something that's going to be elaborate and really stand out and pop. This corset here was a corset that was made for my daughter. It is not a waist cinching corset, it is actually a posture corset. She has Herman's disease. This corset is, I believe, in 1902, and it's for girls aged 12 to 15, and it's adjustable in the shoulders. Herman's disease is where your spine curves forward as opposed to scoliosis, which is an S curve. Her spine actually curves forward, so it makes her look almost as if she has osteoporosis, and she's 15. So we have this made for her. It actually contains spiral steel all through the back, center of the back, and up through the shoulders, so that she can hold her shoulders straight, and that we helped her bones to form in the way that they needed to form as she was growing. Corsetry was originally used for the purposes of posture, not for waist cinching. It was to help people sit up straight. Early corsets were made for children. They have corsets that you can actually even get patterns still now to children aged 3 to 5, 18 months, things of that nature. And it's just to help them sit up straight so they're not slouching all the time, which I tend to do all the time. I'm like, now I can breathe and slouch now. These This particular type of corset, again, not made for a waist cinching, although you can still do it. It will still take your waist in at least 1 or 2 inches if you so desire. It wasn't until probably the 16th century was when they started using corsetry for bringing the waist in for more of an aesthetic look, because they wanted to emphasize the woman's bottom. They really, really liked curvy bottoms. Hence, you know, they have the hip cages that would go out to 6 feet and things like that during the 17th century. It's just like started in the 16th century, the bottoms just got bigger and bigger and bigger. So naturally, if you bring your waist in, it's going to make your bottom look bigger, and it's going to give you the hourglass curve. So that's one reason why they started using this instead of just for posture, but for also, you know, accentuating the backside, because they like the ladies round. It was a sign of good breeding. Not good breeding as in you were born to a good family, but you could be a good breeder. You know, they were looking for birthing hips. And the wider your bottom was, that A, you ate well, and B, you were good for breeding. And that's flat out what the whole purpose of this piece of undergarment was. Some of them were supportive to the girls, but in most cases they kind of switched things down and made it really uncomfortable. Now, I forgot where I was going. Okay, materials. I'm sorry, I got off on a thing. For materials, your materials I most often use are, again, they're upholstery and drapery materials. I have used cottons. I have used jacquards. I've used multiple different things. There are people who like to use the Chinese brocades, and they look very pretty. They really do. They're a pain in the butt to work with, but they look really pretty. There are corsets I tend to do for financial purposes. If I find a piece of material that I like, but it's really expensive, I will get that piece of material and I will combine it with a solid or a lesser expensive material that matches. That is what I'm doing here with this piece. Okay. Which is my fractal print was very expensive. It was like $32 for 1 yard because I had to have it printed. I just can't go into the package store and pick it up. And so I could make 2 corsets out of the 1 yard if I made sure that and the other thing about matching fractals is trying to match the patterns. I could get 2 corsets out of the 1 yard if I made sure that I was very conservative and I combined it with a solid or another color that I thought was suitable. This fractal pattern contains 6 of the 7 colors of the ajas that are Wheel of Time. So when I saw the pattern, the material last year, at the end of last year, I was like, that's so perfect. I cannot wait to make this for JordanCon. It's going to be fantastic. I was really, really excited. I just couldn't find one with that little green in there. I looked everywhere, it wasn't there. So I got 6 of the 7. And you know, usually if you find a piece that you fall in love with, you just take a swatch of that piece around. You match it to, you know, look at it next to everything. Even if it doesn't look like it would match, put it next to it. This thing looks good next to gold. It looks good next to red. It looks good next to brown. Next to blue, it completely, when you put this material next to blue, it totally changes the way that it looks. So you never know what you have in your hand if you have a print that's got multiple colors until you take it around and you hold it up to each and everything that you have available to you. And you will get sometimes the most unlikely of combinations, but in the end, you just never know. Whatever catches your eye is going to be the best. So I tend to use thicker materials. I will use drapery and upholstery materials because I know they'll stand up better. I like to order, now let me briefly touch on pattern companies. Simplicity puts out historical patterns. Butterick, I believe, puts out historical patterns as well. I do not recommend simplicity patterns. I don't recommend them at all. I've been sewing for over 20 years, 25 years now, and I can tell you that with simplicity, they have a corset pattern in simplicity. I think it's the Civil War era corset, which has between 17 and 20 pieces for one corset. And that's just, you know, okay, it's a piece of material that's this big and wraps around your body, and there's 17 to 20 pieces. It's like putting a puzzle together. I've been doing this for 25 years. I cannot even, I wanted to stab my eyeballs out trying to put this thing together. It was the worst pattern I have ever tried to do because there were pieces in it that the whole thing was unnecessary. The main thing about a corset isn't how many strips you can get into it, it's how well it fits your body. And if you can measure yourself or have someone measure you properly and you can make those adjustments to whatever pattern you have, that's great. But it's not necessary, no matter how big or small you are, to have 17 pieces of strips of fabric going around your body. Plus, it makes it really difficult to match patterns. If you're trying to match something that's got a floral design and you want to do a really fancy something with vines in it or florals, you would waste 2 yards of materials trying to match all of these little strips. And you know, some people, they just don't even bother. I don't even match. Just do it out of solid. No problem. So I don't recommend them. I actually purchased my patterns from corsetmakers.com. The ones that I use most are the ageless patterns. Yeah, ageless patterns on corsetmakers.com. Corsetmakers.com is also very reasonable for other tools that you would need. I didn't even pull out all my stuff here. Such as busts. And they're also one of the few places that I've seen that sells lacing bones. Lacing bones are actually, as opposed to just having grommets at the back and then having boning on either side of the piece, it's actually a piece of boning with the holes in it for the grommets. Now these are small holes, these are not for larger grommets. And a lot of people use the larger grommets because they're most accessible, I guess, like fabric stores and things like that. Their prices are very, very good on lacing bones and on steel corset busts, and this one is an extra wide corset bust. So cost-effective wise, also they're very fast. You can order on Monday and get it Wednesday. They're fast, they're efficient, and they have extremely good customer service. Very, very good customer service. So I highly recommend them. When it comes to boning, I don't use steel. Mainly because I don't make waist training corsets. Most people who are doing waist training will only use steel boning. I have a sample of some steel boning here. I don't like this kind of steel boning. This is a more cheaper, thinner steel boning. Because if you put wear and tear on it, these things can break, but they can also kink. And you get a bend in your metal that won't come out. You can't unbend it. Also, the edges can be jagged if it's not properly tipped. So safety reasons, there are reasons I don't like to use this kind of steel boning. Now this corset here has spiral steel in it because it's more flexible. My daughter needed to be able to bend all kinds of different ways, and she wore this every day in her school clothes for 2 years. And middle school, she was busy, so she needed to be able to be flexible. It wasn't for waist training, it was just posture. Spiral steel is great, but it's not going to give you as heavy or good of a, I guess, what's the word, grip? It's not going to be as tight, it's going to be really flexible. If you need flexibility, for whatever reason, I have problems sometimes breathing, so I would like my corsets to be a little more breathable. But again, spiral steel can be a little more expensive. And then your other option is the little cheap plastic boning that you can get in some store-bought corsets or bustier type things. And this is the stuff that is most commonly found at the fabric store, and it has a little white case over a little black casing. I don't use this either. What I use is I go over to the Home Depot or the Lowe's and I get their huge bag of zip ties. Okay, this is a quarter, I think it's a 1/2 inch wide, extra heavy duty zip tie. Really heavy duty. Now the thing about this is that it's flexible, so it allows you to breathe, but it won't kink, it won't warp, it doesn't lose its shape. It doesn't matter how long you've been wearing the same corset, it will not warp and change its shape. It always goes back to its original. And the other thing is I don't have to mess with capping or putting little tips on it or any of that other stuff because I have a handy dandy tool for this. To get the edges and corners down from when I cut it, I use my patty paws. And I just grind it into a little circle at the tip. And that is my secret to making corsets. Easy, okay? Plus the other thing is, you know, this stuff, it has a little, it has an end on it, just like other zip ties. There are little pointy ends that are really good for, you know, tighter areas in a corset. It's got little pointy ends in there, and they're already rounded, so you don't have to round them off. You can cut it. Now these things come in 15-yard packages. Okay, so if you have an extra boned up corset, you'll only need one package, or one package can get you through 2 corsets. It's $6 for one package, $6 to $8. Okay, and each one of these is 1 yard. Okay, so it's 15 pieces of 1 yard apiece. And it really is a lifesaver. Now, if you're one of these people like, oh, I really like steel, I dare you to come up here and take a look at this one. This entire thing is bones. There's 7 yards of this plastic boning in here, and I guarantee you it will sit you just, if not better than any piece of steel that you can get on the market. I mean, rows and rows and rows of it. It's a fantastic alternative to steel boning. It really, really is. It's cost effective, it's less difficult to work with. Okay? And you know, you can get a petty paws at the drugstore. Yeah, on the as seen on TV aisle. But I highly recommend this as opposed to the store. I'm sorry, May. I know you were.
No, I hate that crap.
Yeah, see, I know you were. Yeah, this stuff is crap. It's terrible. It doesn't hold anything. It's good for structure and like sundresses and things like that. But if you're really doing a corset, not the way to go. So that is the best tips that I can give you as far as the boning goes and the materials. It's not that I don't recommend a thin cotton. I actually recommend a thin cotton for the lining, because you're already looking at a heavy-duty material on the outside, and then you're going to have a layer of inner lining to which most of the time the boning is attached. And then you're going to have another, you know, sometimes there's 2 layers, and then depending upon the type of corset you do. And then you'll have, you know, the part that's up against your skin. So choose something soft and breathable and something affordable for the interior. I did not do that when I was making this corset. It is self-lined, and it is very hot. This is a upholstery material. Actually, technically, this was my bedspread. I literally took apart my bedroom suit and made costumes out of it. I've done it like 6 times. My husband's refused to buy us any new bedding. My favorite thing to make costumes out of is a bag. It's a multitude of material. There's enough there to do a super huge costume, and it all has, if you don't have an eye for matching materials, go buy a bed in a bag, because it has corresponding materials. You know, your sheets aren't exactly the same, but yeah, and really it's just a little bit of time with the seam ripper, and you just yank those seams out, and you've got a whole ton of material. You can make a corset out of 2 pillowcases, really. And that is me being broke and not having money to go buy material. I'll go to Goodwill, then buy bedding or draperies, or I'll, you know, hit up some discount stores and buy a bed of bag or draperies, just drapery panels. And it ends up being the best costumes because the prints are oftentimes very era specific. They look like, a Victorian, you can find a Victorian style pattern, things like that. So if you have something in some specific era, bedding and upholstery is always the way to go. I'm looking at these Shear going, man, it would be such a cool steampunk outfit. Because it's just, it's just the nature of this pattern. It's not anything terribly specific, like carrots or little teddy bears or anything like that. So that is, as far as my recommendation goes for that, that's what I would recommend for being cost effective. Also, trims are an amazing way to finish off a corset. It's I like to use embroidered trims. I like to make my own trims. You can make your own ruffles and pleats out of just 2 inches of wide of a contrasting material. Fold it in half, sew it down the middle, and then all you have to do is just pleat it, just a little bit at a time. And you've got a nice little ruffle for the top. Also, upholstery trims, fantastic. They are really, really great, and they're very, very dramatic. This piece is working off of some really heavy-duty drapery and upholstery trim around the bottom and the top. This is a burlesque corset. You know it's a burlesque corset because most historical corsets do not have cups cut out. You can have an underbust corset that will go either straight across or from a point and down. But in most cases, a real historical corset will not have the cups cut. And I did not really make this piece with cups, but that's a whole other terrible story. This is, in fact, this is what is considered a burlesque corset because burlesque performers, they remove, they peel off their little gloves and then they take off their bra and have pieces underneath. But oftentimes, if a burlesque performer is wearing a corset, they will not take it off on stage. So this kind of accentuates everything and that kind of thing. But the trim on this is an upholstery trim. I got it at a textile warehouse and it was really, really cheap. It was $7 a yard. Unfortunately, textile warehouse is closed now, but originally this stuff was like $35 a yard. It's very expensive. And you can get it on sale. Oftentimes the fabric stores like Joann's will have all of their drapery materials and their trims and on sale all the time. They're trying to unload this stuff constantly. I'm right. Okay, so I don't want to counteract you, but yeah, so they're always trying to unload their trims as much as possible. So either you get a coupon out of the mailer and you can get it 50% off, or you can get it go when it's on sale, which is usually every week. It's either 40 or 50, sometimes 30, but most of the time it's pretty inexpensive. And the reason that I'm kind of emphasizing that is because you only need a little bit. A little bit goes a long way with the trim. You don't have to have, unlike a big dress, when you're looking at a corset, you can go with just a yard and a half or two, depending on where you wanted to put the trim, if you wanted to do down the seams or whatever. You can get, just a little bit, and effectively, it goes a long way as far as your cost is concerned. So you might see a piece of trim that you really like, it's expensive as hell, but hey, you don't need a yard of it. Go for it. It really will add to your piece. This one, here's an example. This one is a simple piece. I had to alter it a little bit because Jennifer lost some weight, so I took it in the seams here. But this one is a really simple. She wanted basic, and she didn't want heavy duty burn. She wanted light burn. Bless you.
Thank you.
And it's simple, unbleached cotton muslin on the inside. It's the cheapest material you can buy. It's really soft. You wash it, and it's like, oh, I can sleep on this. So, and because it's natural, unbleached cotton, if you have this against your skin, it's not much. It'll be very, very comfortable. as opposed to like a nylon lining or something along that line. And you can't ever see the lining of a corset, you know, unless you make a reversible one, which is what this one was. So you had a skin tone that you could wear in the light stuff, and then you had black that you could wear in the dark stuff. But I mean, really, nobody sees it. So get what's comfortable to you for the line. Now, okay, so that's, okay. Corset patterns vary, the directions vary based on the time period that they come from sometimes, or the pattern company that you get them from. So what you're looking at in most cases is it's multiple strips of fabric that are made or are set up in kind of an hourglass thing, and it's effectively, you could get the same thing if you took a long strip of fabric and just took in darts all the way around to fit your body. I guess it's easier to cut out the strips and then put them together, and in some cases for ladies who are wider in the hips or wider in the bust, they need something called a gusset, which is an insert panel to kind of hold the cups so that you don't end up with like the boob shop. You know, familiar with the boob shop?
Yes.
Okay. Or ladies who have had enhancements will often, they don't get a boob shelf. What they get is a very distinct line of enhancement. So you can actually visually see any kind of implant if they're wearing a corset that is pressing down on their bust. That is a no-no, because you don't want to look like you have balloons shoved up under your set. It's not, it's very unattractive and very unnatural looking. So if you have a larger bust in proportion to your waist, definitely try to find a pattern that has a bust gusset. And that would be one like this. And I'll have these up here, you guys can look. So really, the next thing that I can recommend is looking for patterns for corsets that are complementary to your body shape and size. Again, ageless patterns, they reprint patterns from the original era. There aren't directions on them. So really you have to have sewing skills to know how to do this. If you can put together a regular pattern though, if you can just cut something out and say, okay, this is piece, this, and this, and they do something better than the other pattern companies. They number the tops and the bottoms of their pattern pieces. So you got 88, 89, and then, so you just connect, and then the next piece is 89, 90. So you just sew together piece number 89, and you know that that's that same. I accidentally did one upside down and backwards the other day. Thanks, Mark. You were laughing at me. She did upside down. I was like, I'll make it work. I'm not doing this again. But for when you're choosing a corset style, you want to take into consideration the garment that's going over it. And if you have a specific era, 17th century, which is this right here. This is a 17th century stay. This is what they would have worn during the, 18th century, 1700s, pardon me. French Revolutionary period, okay? Has these little things under here because that's where the hip cage goes. It slides up into this area right here. It has the adjustable straps so that you can adjust for the bust. And the reason that the center on this is so very pretty is because the dress that goes over it actually exposes the center part of the corset itself. It doesn't cover the entire piece. So most times a 18th century or 1700s era corset is going to be intricately detailed in this way. Now for cost effectiveness, if you are going for a corset in this manner, I would recommend that you would get your extremely beautiful fabric or your most expensive stuff, stick it in the middle, because that's where it's going to be seen, and then do a plain matching or contrasting material along the sides and back. because you want to make sure that you get the most bang for your buck, and visually, these seams right here are areas that get seam lines. In most cases, the dresses are actually kind of a coat. The dress itself goes over the cage, and it's a coat. It gets on your body, and then it hooks along this line right here. So this is the center portion of the dress, and then it has a piece that folds over and covers this area right here. And then it just kind of, it's all of a sudden 5 feet wide. And so you want to take into consideration the style of the dress that you're looking at, what era it's coming from. And Jordan made it difficult. Linda, who has the 13th Depository blog, made it very easy. She has separated each of the regions on the blog in her costuming blog. She separated each group by region and specifically lined out what era and decade that garment, that region, the people from that region, what era and decade that garment comes from. So there's a group that is that wears a Regency style dress. There's a group that wears 1800s or 1700s style dress. And she lists in detail specifically what era that dress comes from, what it looks like, if it has a hip cage or not. And the easiest way, if you're trying to reference a character from the books, or if you're trying to reference peoples from a certain region, the easiest way to do it is go onto her website and look it up, and it'll give it to you specifically there. And then you can quickly find the pattern for the undergarment that you need. And again, it will make a huge difference in the way that your garment, the outer dress fits every single time. Now, one thing that I do when I'm making a corset is I kind of cheat a little bit, because I think corsets are very hot to begin with. You've got all your little strips of material, you sew them down, you sew it together, and so you have basically it looks like a giant belt, and then you press the seams open on each of these pieces of material as you go. And what some of them do is you have a double lining or 2 layers on the inside. I don't like to be that hot, but what some of the patterns will say, okay, well, you need to cut 2 of the inner linings. So you cut 2 of each, and then you sew together all of the strips, and then you end up with basically 2 pieces of thick canvas. The other reason I don't like to do this is because it's so hard to match seams when you're working with curves. It's very, very difficult to match seams. Okay, so you'll end up with 2 pieces of canvas that effectively looks like this. And then what they say to do is match up the seams exactly. Now, even if you're off 1/8 of an inch, it's going to screw it up. So it's always such a pain in the butt to do that. It says match up your seams exactly, and then stitch stripes down. You have to transfer the little line, then you stitch the stripes down, and then leaving the top or bottom open so that you can slide your boning in. So it's fabric, boning, fabric's a little boning sandwich in the end is what you end up with. And then you have to match this thing with the front of the corset and the back of the corset. So you're looking at 4 layers of materials with nearly impossible to match seams. What I do to avoid that is instead I use either double wide or extra wide bias tape. And I just put the bias tape over the seams. In this case, I had kind of a waist belting instead of bias tape because I ran out of bias tape. And it's, if you use an extra wide double fold bias tape and you unfold it, you lay it over the seam, and depending upon how much structure you want in your corset, you can either do 1 layer of boning or you can double up. I doubled up on this one. I don't know why, I just thought it'd be cool. So if you double up, you just stitch along the edges of the bias tape, and then do a couple of stitches. You don't even have to stitch straight down the middle, because I can guarantee you if you stitch straight down the middle, at some point you're going to get off a little bit, and then your two pieces of boning are not going to fit in at the same time. So if you do a couple of stitches at the top, and a little bit in the middle, and a little bit in the bottom, and then guide your boning in, you can do 2 pieces of boning, because there's 2 in each one of these. 2 pieces of boning in each one of these seams. And that's if you want to double up. If not, you just do straight down the center and slide that boning in. What this does, A, it saves you money on interior lining. B, it saves you the pain in the butt of having to make an extra whole bunch of this, and then pressing it out, and then trying to match the seams and all of this other stuff. And so, to me, it's easier. Some people, they prefer to have little sandwich, you know, which that's fine. If that's what you prefer, right? No problem. But this, for me, it just makes more sense. So once you get this down, you will then apply your lining, the inside lining. This is the inside lining of the corset that I'm working on. And the reason I suggest doing this first is because if it's off and alterations have to be made, it's better to do it to the lining as opposed to the decorative outside of your corset. That way, if something is off and you need to make an alteration in some way, shape, or form, you haven't put holes into your outside part or caused damage to the outer part. Especially if you have to go through the trouble of matching patterns and all of that other stuff. You don't have to do that with lining. So you would attach your inner lining piece with boning directly to your outer lining piece and just sew along the same lines. At this point, you won't have boning in it. Okay. At this point, what you're doing is you're just copying. You're tracing these lines that you've already put here. And you know, some people say, well, why not just, you know, have you know, sew this one to the lining and then go. The reason that you don't want to sew just this piece of the lining and have like a outer lining sandwich and an inner lining sandwich is because sometimes boning can poke through and can cause damage to your materials. Also, as you bend and stretch, it's going to wear. And so basically having extra reinforcements, either if it's an extra thing on lining or a double fold bias tape, whatever it is, any kind of extra reinforcements are really going to make that corset last longer. And it looks better. Honestly, it just gives the piece more texture and what's the word I'm looking for? I guess it is more texture and stability. And just in the end, it looks nicer. So most corset patterns are going to have you to do the double lining on the inside, and I just think that this is easier, and you're getting the same effect without having to make a whole other piece. So after you sew down the you stitch over and you basically sew these two pieces together. Depending upon what you're doing with the outside corset is going to determine whether or not you sew the front piece to it or not. At this point, we are not doing any kind of inside out things. Like putting right sides together and then turning it the other way. And the reason is it's because you always finish the ends of your corset with trim of some kind. Okay? You actually will do the inside out parts on the edges where they meet in the back. So you will stitch right sides together on the edges where they meet in the back on both sides, and then you'll turn it the right way. Because that'll leave you a clean edge there. And most of the time you don't want to have decorative trim in the way of your lacing. Okay? I embroider and bead on my corsets. That is what my favorite thing to do is. I love to add extra things that just make them come out and stand out. If it's a regular piece, all you have to do Just do exactly the same thing as you did before. Sandwich, boning sandwich. You take your outer piece and you attach it to the middle lining and the outer lining in the exact same way that you did before. Now, this is where it gets tricky. After you have done that, and see, you want to be extra careful to make sure that you stayed on the same stitching lines, because sometimes you can go in a little bit and your boning won't slide in. Sometimes you go out a little bit and the boning's kind of wonky. You want to be real careful to make sure you stay on the same line. And even though I've been doing this for a really long time, I can tell you when I pull this off and I look at my system like, oh my God, that looks like crap, because it's on the outside. You know, your machine skips some stitches or something gets loose or it doesn't like working with multiple layers of fabric, whatever it may be. If you are concerned about the exterior and what it looks like on the outside, May, can you stand up for me? Let me see what you have going on.
I just have a bodice.
Okay. But if you're concerned about, because you can see her bodice here, in most cases on a corset, it's going to have the seams on both sides like this. If you get that and it ends up looking weird, or the lines are crooked and it's not straight or whatever, don't freak out. You didn't mess it up. What you do is you go over to the Michaels and you find yourself some trim, some little cheap ribbon, and you cover that seam up. You hide it. And that's the best way to fix that kind of stuff, because honestly, no matter how long someone's been making corsets, there are times when they mess up. And unless you have the right kind of machines, and I know lots of corset makers, they have these really great industrial machines that can really plow through it, but I'm not one of those. I'm not one of these mass corset maker kind of girls. My stuff is custom, it's made to fit your body, you move and breathe in it, and it's got a decorative flair to it. That's what I like to do. So I really don't need that machine. And you know, those machines will just plow right through and make the perfect straight stitches every single time. It's almost like a computerized thing. It will, a lot of times people are like, well, how come yours doesn't look like theirs? Well, because I don't have all of this big machine set up to do this. You know, my stuff is classic vintage by hand. It's gonna look, you know, classic vintage by hand. That's what it's supposed to look like. It can always be covered. I'm sure that anybody who has shopped in a drapery department of any store at any given time has seen this little swirly design piece of trim right here. It basically comes in every color you can possibly imagine. And if you can't find it in the color you want at Joann's, go to Hobby Lobby. Go to, you know, because they have it everywhere. This color is probably 15 years old, and I found it, you know, last year at Hobby Lobby, actually. But it's standard. And the good thing about it is it's wide enough to cover any kind of wonky seam. So there is no reason why you can't put out a piece that looks really, really nice. And just as nice as anybody that mass produces corsets. As long as you have, you know, the ability, and honestly, this stuff is like 99 cents a yard. It's not very expensive. This ribbon that I got right here, it's 50 cents a spool, or 99 cents depending on where you go for a spool. It makes great lacing. I am not a lacing snob. I do not say you have to have corset lacing. Absolutely not. Corset lacing is ugly. It's ugly and it doesn't match. That's the big thing. You know, if you're going to go through the effort of making something beautiful, you want your lacing to match. This one is just kind of a satin lacing. Now, it unlaces pretty easily, but you can lace it to where your corset will not come undone as you're pulling, and I can show you how to do that. So I use that satin one a lot because it really, you can match it to pretty much anything you need, and they have all these different colors. It's fantastic. Then there's a rope lacing. This one I like a lot because no matter how hard or tight I pull it, and we can pass this around, no matter how hard or tight you pull, it looks pretty, but it's also really, really sturdy. This is a fantastic alternative to corset lacing.
Nice.
Penelope's is first grain ribbon. That's it. The only thing you have to worry about that, or like if you use shoelaces or bootlaces, I know some people who like to use bootlaces, you may want to put a modesty panel on the inside to prevent lacing burns. Because if you pull tight on that, it will burn you. And you will, I've had performers who have been improperly laced. They didn't have a modesty panel, someone was in a hurry, they pulled her, and she has had scars for 2 years where the lacing has burned her. So you definitely want to, if you're working with something that has a rough texture to it, you want to put some kind of a modesty panel in the back of that to protect your skin on the back. And again, lacing does not have to be expensive. It can be cheap, it can be whatever you like, and it can match whatever you want. I don't suggest using things that have a heavy texture like our little decorative friend here. And honestly, why would you use shoelaces when you have so many other alternatives? The lace and trim department at your fabric store is going to be a great place to go for that. Also, for the rustic feel, leather. You can do the leather ones. The only thing that I don't like about the leather is if sometimes after a while, the wear and tear, it'll get taut and it will break. But as far as like just a general, if you're doing a Renaissance style corset it's got multiple laces in the front, like this one here, or multiple laces, areas that you lace on the side, it's fine for doing the sides as long as it's not the primary one that brings you into the back. Okay, but the leather ones, it's just fine for the sides because that's the one you don't really mess with too much. There's something all over Okay, so the next thing that I wanted to talk about real quick, grommets. We like small, we like big. People have different preferences. I prefer small grommets. For some reason or other, the larger ones, they just don't appeal to me because I think it takes away from the look of the corset. Again, I'm someone who corsets for aesthetic appeal as opposed to underwear. So if you're looking for aesthetic, I choose smaller grommets. They make them in different colors. You can get them. Let's see. You can get them in, I put grommets on one girl the other day that are actually green. This one has blue grommets. It doesn't quite match that. I didn't like the way it came out, but and they're really small, and they kind of give your corset a more of a delicate look as opposed to kind of an industrial look. If you're going for more steampunk style, you have these big, and you can get them in like a rustic, different colors. They don't all have to be super shiny silver. Again, corsetmakers.com, and they sell them in different sizes. They sell them in the big size, and they sell them in the tiny size, and they sell them with washers to go on the back so that you do not have unraveling at the holes on the back. Okay? Now, here's the magic. This is the magic right here. For years, let me tell you, I struggled because I didn't make corsets for a long time. I didn't make corsets for a long time because I didn't like the hammer and the awl and the corset, the grommet tool, and then if you didn't hit it right, then you have some kind of janky metal edge. It just did not work out. So here's my infomercial. This is called a crocodile. It is the best thing ever. It is called a crocodile, C-R-O-P-A dial. Okay? It is found in the scrapbooking section of your local fabric store. Scrapbooking. And don't call them and say, hey, you got a crocodile? They're going to say, I don't know what you're talking about. It's not notions. No, it is in scrapbooking. Okay, it is super nifty. First of all, when you squeeze the handle, you have a hole punch option. No more awls, no more sharp pointy things, no more hammers. You got this, and it does it in multiple sizes. There's a 1/8 inch and there's a 3/16. Okay, so you can do small and you can do big. It's fabulous. This side with the big ones, this side with the little ones. Okay, poke your holes for you. And I have fibromyalgia, so my hands hurt. That's the one thing that kept me from making corsets for years was my hands hurt. Poke the holes and it will go through multiple layers of fabric without even anything. It's great. Then the bonus side is that it has this little attachment here that you can take out and turn to fit your grommet size. And you put your grommet in there and you squeeze, and that's it. And you get instant grommet. No mess, no fuss, no funky edges. That's it, right here. It's about 30 bucks and it's worth every penny. 2 hours of fighting with grommets and holes and blah, 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 and alls turn into 20 minutes. I'm not lying. I will pull out a strip of fabric. I have extra grommets. If you guys want to come up here and try it out, feel free. Please go right ahead. Because this is the best thing ever. And I'm not even lying. I have no idea where I found it. Actually, I do know where I got it. A friend of mine was having to work on a Mandalorian costume for him, and he needed to have multiple snaps put on this so that he could put his armor onto his piece, make it snap on. And this does snaps too. It does snaps, it does grommets, it does pretty much anything that requires one of those funky tools. And it has the head that can be adjusted, and the packaging that comes in tells you what to put it on for what size grommets or snaps that you're using. Okay? It doesn't do the giant size one, then you really don't need something like this for that size. This is perfect for corsetry. It's absolutely perfect. I cannot say enough. Okay, and it comes in green, so you don't have to have it. I'm just saying, some people don't like pink. You know, you can get it green too if you're more earthy. Okay. So that is basically that is the down and dirty how to do it. If you have questions on how to actually build corsets and how to put them together, fine, come up and ask me. I'm available. If you want to look at different corsets. Oh, one thing. Okay, I did say something here. Corset styles. How to pick the right style for your body. You look at your body type, you look at yourself in the mirror, and you say, what do I not like and what am I okay with? I am small and thin, and like, oh, she's perfect. She doesn't have any room. No complaining there. Yes. I'm wearing enough spandex on my ass right now to save the Titanic. I mean, seriously, it stretched that sucker right back up. This is because I have 4 children, ages 15 to 4. So, of course, I'm not happy. I have stretch marks from under my boobs to the tops of my knees, and I'm flabby and cellulite and everything. I prefer, and I'm okay with my bust, but whatever. I prefer a long line corset. I prefer a long line corset because it has these hip gussets that go over the hip and smooth things out. It's like the one-piece girdle from the 50s. It's fantastic. These are both under bust, long line corsets. This one kind of sits over the hip like this. And then this one goes all the way down like this. So those are the areas that I want to improve and that I want to look nicer and thinner. So that's the style that's good for me. I'm not really looking for bust reinforcement or anything of that nature. So I'm okay with having an underbust because I can wear my bra with it. If we're looking at undergarments, not the fancy smancy kind. This one right here is made for women who have the poochie pooch. If we have a poochie here, it's a longer over the hip corset, and it goes even lower over the abdomen. Plus, if you are a full size plus size girl in the areas up here, it has bust gussets. Now, if you aren't, you can opt to not put those gussets in. or you can make them smaller. But it will actually hold your body shape. It holds the girls up without creating the boob shelf, you know, and then you don't have to smell your own boobs all day. And it's spectacular for, you know, giving you a nice natural curve under your garment. This one here is the shoulder. It's like a tank top. This is really good for people who are trying to work on their posture. I have one of these and I love it because it really helps me with the back pain from sitting at a sewing machine all day. I can wear this while I'm sewing. It doesn't cause too much pain. So I like this one, and also it goes lower in the front as well. Most of the corsets that I like to pick, especially from Asian patterns, they don't stop here. They go to like right here or lower, and it's a real full body thing. This is the S curve, and I highly don't recommend that. It comes to the middle of the bust, but the curvature of the back, it actually deforms your body. I refuse to make these, and I highly recommend that nobody go for this, okay? It caused a lot of medical problems, and unfortunately was the most popular style of corset during the late 1800s, early 1900s. Very, very, very popular, and a lot of women were deformed and had medical problems for all of their lives because it literally would move their organs around and it changed the shape of their spine, so they could not go a single day without having this corset. If they took it off, it would pretty much break their back. It was a very, very bad situation. This one is kind of a riding corset. This is more for the busty gal, and it comes out more. It has more room in this area, and then it sits on the hip. So if you're happy with your lower regions, but you want the extra support in the top, this is the one for you. All of these are ageless patterns, and they're available at corsetmakers.com, and the patterns are about $7 a piece, between $7 and $8 a piece. They're very inexpensive. And all of them are, like I said before, they have numbers on them, so that all you have to do when you cut your pattern out, even if you don't have directions, you just match the numbers and sew it together like a puzzle. It's pretty easy. It gets a little tricky when you're doing hip gussets and bust gussets, but if you have experience in sewing, it should be okay. Also, if you don't have experience in sewing, you can actually call them and they will walk you through what you're doing. They're very, very good at that. So that is, you know, these are some of these. All of these actually, I just happen to have these in my box because I was at an AcroCon, and these are all Victorian era corsets, so late 1800s, early 1900s corsets. For some of the other styles that Jordan talks about in his book, there is the Regency, which is the impure waist garment. It's a dress. It's high-waisted, and then it's kind of flows out at the bottom. And that one is actually not really so much a corset as it is what May is wearing. It's almost like a vest. It's just a shoulder strap, and it comes around like this right here, and it stops because most of those women didn't need anything further because the dress kind of is from here down. It only emphasizes the bust, and it just kind of pushed those girls up and so that was, you know, nice round curves, and they were just made specifically for that reason. There was no medical reason to have those other than the fact that it made you look good in your dress because they have low cut lines there. So, is there any questions?
Do you have any tips on how to make a corset look good reversed?
We're out of time, but yes, I do. What I did on this one was we didn't sew the seams down. Like most of the times you can see the seams in the corset, like in this piece right here. You can see the seams where the boning is sewed in. We did sandwich the boning in this one so that it wouldn't go anywhere. So we did inner layer 1, boning, inner layer 2, so you had a boning sandwich. And then we put an outside layer on this way, and then the outside layer on this way. The seams didn't have to match perfectly, and then we just edged the whole thing. It was incredibly easy to do. And then what I did was I have one hook, or one whole part of the bust, and actually, somebody took out the other side. I just chose a thin hook side of the bust, and I doubled it up. So I put one on this side, and then I put one on this side, and really, it doesn't actually rub against you in a bad way, or make you feel uncomfortable. If so, you can always just twist your something there, like a mossy panel in the front. But otherwise, that's how I did it. So it can be taken off and just reversed. And again, there's you don't have to match it with any seams. We just use basic soft materials that would be comfortable under the garment and no extreme decorativeness at all. If you wanted a deck, and also you can see this one has shoulder straps, so it has to have a little flap on both inside and out. And again, if you're doing a reversible corset, you want to make sure the material on both sides is comfortable for your skin. You know, it's on no matter what. But since they seem like it's 2 o'clock now, so they're going to toss me out of here. I am at the table in the dealer hall. If anybody has any questions, I will be there for the rest of the day. So come by, look at my corset, take a look at the stuff, and ask me any questions that you might possibly have. And also, you can test my crocodile. I'll have it out so you can test it out.